Donald Tusk is visiting Paris and Berlin. With one-on-one meetings with Emmanuel Macron and Olaf Scholz, what political signals will come from this visit? Is the head of the Polish government seeking the support of Germany and France, the two largest powers of the European Union, for the way in which, as he says, he is restoring the rule of law on the Vistula River? Donald Tusk arrived in Paris as part of a mini-tour that later sees him travel to Berlin, seeking closer ties with Europe's two largest powers as the war in Ukraine enters its third year, and Europe's capitals eye the possibility of Donald Trump returning to the White House. He stressed that there is no alternative to the partnership between Europe, NATO and the United States for facing mounting security risks as fear grows of a disengagement from Washington. Trump sparked outrage among Western partners at the weekend after suggesting that the United States might not protect NATO allies who are not spending enough on defence from a potential Russian invasion. Tusk also said that France and Poland are on the same page with regard to the geopolitical situation and support for Ukraine. I want to emphasize very clearly here in Paris that there is no alternative to the European Union. There is no alternative to transatlantic cooperation. There is no alternative to NATO. Europe must become a safe continent, and this means that the European Union, France and Poland must become strong countries, ready to defend their own borders and territory, and to defend and support our allies and friends from outside the Union. It is not only because France and Poland are traditional friends. It is not only because we have known each other for many years and trust one another. We can always rely on each other. But it is also because I have the feeling that in these very difficult and demanding times, the positions of France and Poland in all important matters are much closer, whether bilaterally or within the European Union, like those relating to security and Europe's geopolitical position, particularly in the context of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. I am glad that we are also, in a sense, renewing, I use the word revitalization, the Weimar Triangle. After the meeting with you, dear friend, I will also travel to Berlin. I will speak with Chancellor Scholz. The foreign ministers will meet in the Weimar format here in Paris. It seems that we must take on a really great responsibility, and we are ready to cooperate with France to seriously address the questions of the security and the future of Europe. The Weimar Triangle platform of political cooperation between Germany, France and Poland was created in 1991. The farmers' protest, which started on Friday, will last until the 10th of March. Today, those blocking the border crossing in Hrebeny broke the agreement with the mayor of Lubica Królewska commune regarding the passage of TIR vehicles entering Poland from Ukraine. Protesters claim that trucks with food products, which were officially only supposed to transport them through Poland in transit, ended up leaving their goods here. From today, the crossing in Hrebeny will be blocked by about 400 farmers with tractors. Farmers oppose the introduction of the EU Green Deal and the excessive inflow of goods from Ukraine. With the details, Pavel Błoch. Prime Minister Donald Tusk ended his skiing holidays and inaugurated the campaign for the local elections. During his Sunday speech in Morong, he referred to the farmers' protest. We cannot allow ill-conceived decisions. This applies to Ukraine and the so-called Green Deal. They do not take into account the specifics and do not foresee the consequences, so that such decisions directly harm the interests of thousands of farmers in Poland and in Europe. Now Donald Tusk criticises the so-called Green Deal, but in 2020, MEPs from the Civic Platform voted for the introduction of climate restrictions that threaten Polish agriculture.
The
words that Mr. Donald Tusk says are an attempt to blur the whole matter. The EPP is responsible for the Green Deal and Fit for 55 because it governs the European Parliament and the European Commission and decides everything in the European Union. Polish farmers are also protesting against duty-free imports of Ukrainian grain. In November 2023, the then Minister of Agriculture, Anna Gębicka, published a list of companies importing grain from Ukraine. Now the document is being questioned by the Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Michał Kołodziejczak. In my opinion, the list published by the previous minister is untrue. This is, of course, a lie. I published the data available to the ministry based on information from specific veterinary services and agricultural inspections. Michał Kołodziejczak became known in politics as an organizer of agricultural protests. Now that he has become a minister in Donald Tusk's government, farmers consider him to be a traitor. Who showed it on the screens? I saw only one television, TVN. They were at every protest. I also wanted to go to the eastern border. But when I saw that only one TV station supported it, a warning light came on. It was fake.
Kołodziejczak jest totalnie niewiarygodny w tym momencie.
Kołodziejczak is completely unreliable, and farmers rightly believe that his so-called trade union activities turned out to be a path to political advancement. On the 9th of February, general strike of Polish farmers began. Roads were blocked in over 260 towns across the country. Currently, there are unofficial reports that the distribution centres of the most popular retail chains in Poland will also be the target of blockades. On the 20th of February, farmers plan to move to Warsaw.
20 lutego ponownie wychodzimy na ulicę.
On the 20th of February, we will take to the streets again. We are very desperate. We do not want scenes known from France or Spain to appear in our country. But if there is no reaction, we will intensify our protests. At the same time, farmers' protests against the European Union's policies are taking place across Europe, and new sectors are joining the strike. This is the first ever joint protest of farmers and truck drivers. Never in history have both sectors come together on the streets, and now for the first time we are making a public commitment that we will definitely implement. Farmers blocked crossings on the Polish-Ukrainian border as part of the protest. However, it should be remembered that there would be no duty-free import of grain from Ukraine if it were not for the Russian full-scale invasion of the eastern country, which has been going on for almost 2 years. Paweł Błoch, Telewizja Republika. Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced that the Central Communication Hub, or CPK in Polish, would be carried out in the interests of Poland, and that he will reach into the pockets of Poles to achieve this goal. Former government spokesman Piotr Muller is already warning that work is being delayed due to the current government's inaction. What next for the CPK? I'm checking today, says editor Holdinska. Prime Minister Donald Tusk is threatening Poles with huge expenses. Experts say that most of the money will be provided by foreign investors. However, there was an announcement that the CPK would be established. When and for how much? I'm checking this today. We will carry out the project, which today is called CPK, in the interests of Poland, using public money down to the last penny. There will be no millions paid for mowing a meadow in Baranów. There will be no unjust expropriations. We will put it back on track. And here comes another problem. CPK is not only public money. The strategic investor of CPK is to be IFM Global Infrastructure Fund and the Vinci Airports Consortium. They were supposed to spend 8 billion zloty on the investment. The parties were to jointly apply for a loan to carry out the investment. It will come to a point that we will either give up the participation of foreign investors or they will withdraw themselves. But Vinci itself was to be the airport operator. What now? In a situation in which the consortium withdraws, not only will the loan application have to be larger by 8 billion zloty, but it will significantly increase the risk of not obtaining a loan at all, and consequently, the cost to the state budget will increase by several dozen billion zloty. You're at the level of kindergarten banter about guarding the meadow. You get excited about who earned how much, and this is the level you present. Although CPK would place Poland only in 12th place among European airports, there is no doubt that the closest large competitive transport airport is German Frankfurt. According to Donald Tusk, this proves Law and Justice's complexes. To be honest, I have no complexes towards the Germans or the French, and I don't have to prove that I have a bigger airport. We're not racing against other countries. We just have to do our own thing. There is no point in adding a political element here. We simply need to build this airport. And here, at least in theory, there is agreement. Both the current and previous governments, but also experts, speak with one voice. This decision must be thoughtful and cannot have a political or ambitious context. It must be right on target. But it is the politicians in power who deliberately use arguments that may arouse public outrage. The Prime Minister said in Morang that in order to build the CPK, Poland needs to reach into the pockets of Polish families. If I have to say yes, we will all pay for CPK, so each family has to pay 50,000 zloty. Do you know what 50,000 zloty is for the average Polish family? So far, however, there are only political squabbles. A specific list of allegations against the previous CPK authorities will be created following an audit of the company. Well, we changed our schedules to make the construction go faster. How? By shortening administrative deadlines. I admit guilt. by running several processes in parallel. I admit guilt, and even horror, by working double shifts. I plead guilty too. Meanwhile, this investment is not only at a standstill, but also may be seriously delayed due to the government's inaction. Centre-right Alexander Stubb of the National Coalition Party declared himself the winner of Finland's presidential election runoff on Sunday as 93.9% of the votes were counted. Earlier in the evening, when the first results were announced, Stubb of the National Coalition Party led with 52.7% support from ballots cast in advance, Justice Ministry data showed. The Liberal Green Party member, Pekka Haavisto, was behind him at 47.3% support, with 58.3% of the votes counted, the data showed. Finland elects a new head of state who will also be responsible for its security and foreign policy. Stubb, a former Prime Minister, won the first round on the 28th of January with 27.2% of the vote, ahead of Haavisto on 25.8%. He had also led Haavisto in surveys, most recently by 6 to 8 percentage points. The vote marks a new era in Finland, which for decades has elected presidents to foster diplomacy, in particular with neighbouring Russia, and opted not to join military alliances so that it could soothe the tensions between Moscow and NATO.
Yeah, feeling quite relaxed. I mean, it's been a long campaign, so of course you start getting a little bit tired towards the end, but we feel quite good about where we are, and to be honest, the campaign has been, I think, very respectful. I'm proud of Finnish democracy and the way in which we're able to conduct debates on difficult issues. The reason for it is probably that for Finland, foreign policy is existential, and people understand that. And in the linchpins of history, I think we can always take big decisions with a consensus and together. There's still a strong support in my mind for a rules-based international system and a support for the classic international organizations such as the UN. At the same time, realism means that you need to understand hard power. You need to have a strong defense force. You need to join NATO. I've been an advocate of Finnish NATO membership since the 1990s. You need to forge close alliances with countries that secure your interests, like the United States. The differences are not that radical. I mean, I've always been a NATO advocate. Pekka hasn't, but he was the one who negotiated us into NATO. And again, that, I think, for me, exemplifies the fact that foreign policy for us is existential. We both want to see Finland in the core of NATO. I think we should be a security provider, not a security consumer.
But Finns changed their minds about playing that role after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and a rapid U-turn led to the country joining NATO in April last year. Now, under the Western Alliance's security umbrella, the new president will replace Sauli Niinisto, who is retiring after 2 6-year terms. Niinisto's successor will have a central role in defining Finland's NATO policies while taking the lead on overall foreign and security policy in close cooperation with the government and acting as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.